Welcome back to Unsolicited Feedback, the podcast where we cut through the noise, skip the corporate jargon, and get real about what actually drives results. Because let's be honest, hope is not a business strategy. I'm your host, Chuck Knabusch, the operations guy, and after 40 plus years across the military, corporate America, and now entrepreneurship, I've seen what works, what breaks, and why leadership, planning, and execution are the great separators between average and exceptional results. As you're catching the replay, send your thoughts or challenges directly to me at chuck@13ten.com, chuck@13ten.com. Hey, as your time matters, let's jump straight into today's topic. Stop the rambling updates. How a simple Sitrep will fix your leadership meetings. Let me paint a picture for you. You're in a leadership meeting. It's scheduled for, say 60 minutes. You're 42 minutes in, and you've only covered two people. One person is still talking. They started with, just to give you a little context, and then proceeded to take you back to 2017. You've heard about staffing challenges, supplier frustrations, historical decisions, and 3 different insights. But you still don't know, are they on track? Are they off track? Is revenue at risk? Do they need a decision? Or are they just thinking out loud? We've all lived it. Or maybe it's the 11:48 p.m. email titled Quick Update, which is neither quick nor an update. It's a novella. So today we're going to fix that. We're going to borrow a concept from the military, the Sitrep, or situation report, and adapt it for operations, leadership teams, and organizations that are serious about execution. Because here's the truth. Most organizations don't have a strategy problem. They have a reporting discipline problem. And it's quietly killing clarity, speed, and accountability. So here's the biggest problem. Leaders confuse activity reporting with operational clarity. That's the problem. Not communication, not engagement, not alignment. Operational clarity. So let's define that. Operational clarity means everyone knows the mission. Everyone knows the current status. Everyone knows what's off track. Everyone knows what decisions are required. And everyone knows what happens next. Most organizations just don't have that. Instead, they have narrative. They have context. They have explanation. Let me give you some background. Is often camouflage. Now let's add a second challenge that's even more dangerous. Leaders tolerate rambling updates because it feels collaborative. They think, if I cut someone off, I look authoritarian. If I force brevity, I'm shutting people down. Or if I structure updates too tightly, we lose creativity. No. What you lose without structure is speed, and speed is survival. According to a McKinsey study, executives spend nearly 23 hours per week in meetings. That's over half the work week. Okay, the standard work week. Harvard Business Review reports that 71% of senior managers say meetings are unproductive and inefficient. Think about that. More than half the week in meetings, and most of them are inefficient. And we wonder why execution slips. The problem isn't that people are talking. The problem is that they're talking without structure. So here's the biggest symptom of that problem. Here's what they're experiencing. Meetings run long. Discussions run late. That's the symptom. You don't have a time management problem. You have a clarity problem. Here's how it shows up. Leadership meetings that regularly exceed their scheduled time. Updates that trigger side conversations. Issues discovered late. Leaders surprised by performance gaps. I didn't know that was off track. Or, Why are we just hearing about this now? And my ultimate favorite, we need better communication. No. You need better reporting discipline. When updates are unstructured, people bury the lead. They justify instead of report. They confuse busyness with progress. They offload thinking into the room. You know what I mean by that? They haven't decided whether they're on track, so they talk until someone else reacts. That's not leadership. That's crowdsourced decision making. And here's the hidden cost. Every rambling update consumes cognitive bandwidth. Every tangent creates fatigue. Every unfocused discussion drains executive attention. And attention, it's finite. Daniel Kahneman, Nobel Prize-winning psychologist, showed us that decision quality degrades as cognitive load increases. Decision fatigue is real. If your leadership meeting feels exhausting, it's not because the business is hard. It's because clarity is missing. So what do most people try and do to fix the problem? Here's what organizations usually try. First, let's keep updates shorter. They tell people, let's be more concise. But nothing changes because concise isn't structure. It's a wish. They reduce meeting time. We're cutting this from 90 minutes to 60. Now you have rushed ramblings instead of slow ramblings. They create slides. PowerPoint becomes the answer. Now instead of rambling verbally, you ramble in bullet points. 10 slides per department, 35 slides per meeting, but nobody reads them. They implement dashboards. Hey, dashboards are great if people know how to interpret them. But dashboards don't replace disciplined reporting. They just visualize chaos faster. They eliminate updates altogether. Hey, we'll only talk about major issues, which means you discover major issues way too late. So here's the pattern. Most solutions try to reduce noise, but they don't increase clarity. And that's why they rarely work. So why those solutions rarely work? Because they don't change the mental model. They don't force leaders to answer 5 critical questions. What was the mission? What were the results? What's the status? What are the risks? And what decisions are needed? Without that structure, human nature takes over. And human nature loves storytelling. But storytelling is dangerous in operations. The military figured that out long ago. In combat, you don't have time for narrative. You don't say, let me give you a little background on how we got here. Instead, you say, objective secure, 2 wounded, enemy withdrew north, request medevac. Clarity saves lives. Now, I understand we're not in combat, but we are in competitive markets, and delayed clarity kills margin. It kills momentum. Ultimately, it kills morale. So here's the counterintuitive point. Longer updates often signal lower competence. Not always, but often. Because leaders who truly understand their operation can summarize it clearly. As Albert Einstein said, if you can't explain it simply, you don't understand it well enough. When somebody needs 7 minutes to explain a weekly update, it often means they haven't distilled it, they haven't prioritized it, they haven't decided what matters. And so they bring you into their thinking process instead of bringing you a conclusion. That's exhausting. So what's the one thing you can actually do to move the needle? Here it is. Implement a 6-block operations Sitrep. Non-negotiable, 3 minutes per person, structured, repeatable. The operation Sitrep, every update must follow this format. No exceptions. 1, objective. What was the mission this period? Not, we've been working on, our objective was to ship 1,200 units at 98% on time. Mission clarity comes first. Second, results. The target, the actual, the variance, and the trend. Numbers first, opinions second. Third, status. One color, green, you're on track. Yellow, you're at risk. And red, you're off track. No purple, no light red, no kind of yellow, no orange. Commit. Key risks. The top three only. Give the issue, the impact, and the owner, and the estimated time of correction, or ETA. That's it. If you list 9, you don't understand your operation. 3. Actions underway. What are you doing about it? Be specific. Be time-bound. I'm going to do this by this time. Or Fred's going to do this by Tuesday. The 6th, decisions needed. Be explicit. If you need nothing, say, no executive action required. That phrase alone transforms meetings. So what happens when you implement this? Let me tell you what actually changes. The first week, it's awkward. People struggle. They ramble anyway. But you interrupt. Stick to the format. Feels rigid. Second week, people prepare a little bit more. They think beforehand. They come in cleaner and clearer. By the third week, meeting time drops 30 to 50%. Not because you talk less, because you talk about the right things. The fourth week, leaders start self-correcting before the meeting. Why? Because no one wants to stand up and say red without a recovery plan. The format drives accountability. Not yelling, not pressure, structure. Here's a real-world story. I worked with an operations team that had a weekly 2-hour meeting. It routinely ran 2 hours and 40 minutes, maybe even a little more. They believed they were highly collaborative. Translation, nobody wanted to shut anybody else down. We implemented a strict Sitrep format, 3 minutes per leader, discussion only triggered by red status, enterprise risk, or a decision required. Within 6 weeks, meeting time dropped to 75 minutes. Issues were identified earlier. Escalations were clearer. And here's the kicker. Engagement went up. Because when people know they'll be heard, but within structure, they prepare better. Freedom without structure creates chaos. Structure creates freedom. So why does this work psychologically? Well, the Sitrep does 3 very powerful things. 1, it reduces cognitive load. It forces pre-meeting thinking. It shifts reporting from narrative to outcome. It changes status from emotional to factual. Instead of, we've had some challenges, you say, target 1,200, actual 1,050, yellow. Overtime added through Thursday. That's clean. That's simple. That's adult conversation. Now, you can even use this in an emergency mode. And this is where it gets even more powerful. In emergency, organizations melt down. Updates become frantic. Information becomes fragmented. And emotion spreads. A Sitrep in emergency mode adds what happened, when, operational capacity percentage, containment action, estimated time to recovery, and it's clinical, calm, and clear. And calm is contagious. So here's some challenges you'll face implementing this. Let's be honest. You're going to hit resistance. You're going to hear, this feels too rigid. Good. Discipline always feels rigid to those used to freedom without accountability. Our work is too complex for this. No, complexity is exactly why you need structure. Talk about complexity on the battlefield. They use Sitreps. It doesn't allow nuance. Nuance belongs in follow-up discussions, not status updates. We're not the military. Correct. And you don't need to be. But operational clarity is universal. Here's the final thought. If your meetings run long, it's not because people care too much. It's because clarity isn't required. If your meetings and updates ramble, it's not because people are unintelligent. It's because structure isn't enforced. If your leaders are surprised by performance, it's not because they lack data. It's because reporting lacks discipline. Implement the Sitrep. 3 minutes, 6 blocks, no exceptions. You'll feel uncomfortable at first, but that's growth. And here's the irony. The more structured your updates become, the more time you'll have for real strategic conversation. Because you won't be drowning in narrative. You'll be operating with clarity, and clarity scales. Hope doesn't. If you found this useful, subscribe. Next time, we'll talk about how to embed this into leader standard work so it becomes culture, not just a meeting trick. Until then, protect your time, protect your clarity, and stop letting updates steal both. And that's a wrap for today's episode of Unsolicited Feedback. Thanks for joining me, but don't just nod along. Apply something from today's conversation. Because results don't show up just from listening. They show up because you did something. Even one small action this week will move the needle farther than a month of good intentions. If you want to go deeper, scan the QR code or schedule a 30-minute strategy chat. I'd love to hear how you're using planning, leadership, and execution to make sure hope never becomes your business strategy. Drop a comment and like the episode. I'm Chuck Knabusch. Until next time, stay focused, stay disciplined, and don't you dare rely on hope.